Stories After Dusk.
I came back to my hometown for the holidays. It's a fairly rural area with woods and everything is peaceful. I love going to pick wild berries, and I was doing just that when I encountered the first paranormal experience of my life. It had happened in the backyard of my neighbor. There are wild berry shrubs there. Here are a few details so that the story makes sense. I used to have an old man who lived alone as my neighbor, and he was a very kind person. He used to give us those berries as candied sweets. He passed away due to cardiac failure when I was in high school, and his house is empty ever since. I wanted to make those sweet berries for my family as a holiday comfort food, and thus, we went to his place. Now, as he passed a few years ago, there was a lot of undergrowth and wild grass in his yard, and everything was messy. I cleared some of the growth and made way to the shrubs, cleaning the place as much as I could, thinking about how clean he used to keep everything. All this time, I had a feeling that something was off, and that I was being watched, but I brushed it off. I was 2 minutes into picking when I heard my neighbor's voice. I'm sure it was him, saying I should be more careful and to pick up the rake immediately. It was as if I was fainting. Everything was fast or slow. I can't really explain that. But as soon as I picked up the rake, some homeless man tried to stab me with a knife. I used the sharp end of the rake to scare him off and kept shouting loudly. He ran off. After I gathered myself, I had tears, but couldn't shake off a smile I had. It was eerie, but I am unharmed. I think I'm going to clean my neighbor's place. I owe him that much. I hate reading super lengthy stories with a million different additional details that are supposed to create atmosphere, but actually just detract from what's being said. So I'm going to try and be as brief and straight to the point as possible. So, the parents were going to a party and were supposed to be home 9ish, but rang me saying that they wouldn't be back until midnight. So it was my job to put the kids to bed, which I had no problem with. They were the sweetest, most well-behaved kids I've ever met. It got to 9:30, and the kids brushed their teeth, got their books, and went to bed. I tidied up, sat down, did a little homework, and then FaceTimed my friend. This is a religious family, and there are crosses on some of their walls. I heard what sounded like someone knocking on the front door, but it was about 10:15, and the parents usually message me when they're almost home. And of course, they have keys, so I automatically suspected it wasn't them. I checked, and there was nobody at the door, so I just sat back down on the couch and got carried away talking to my friend again. Then, the same knocking, literally, knock, knock, knock. They have guinea pigs, and I started to suspect it was those guys nibbling on the cage or fucking around, so I went and checked. But they were in their little home thing. I still believed it was them. But as I was leaving the room, I saw the wooden cross that was nailed at its head on the wall lift from the bottom and drop 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. As though some force was lifting the bottom half that wasn't nailed and dropping it like a door knocker. I just froze. And my friend was like, "What? What? What?" I tiptoe ran back into the living room. I don't know what the fuck caused that. I started to think maybe it was one of the kids jumping from upstairs, causing the walls to shake. But the cross is on the wall between the kitchen/dining room, and directly above was the parents' room and the bathroom. So unless they were in the parents' room or the bathroom jumping up and down in threes, it doesn't really make sense. Plus, I was almost adamant they were asleep. Perhaps coincidentally, the homework I was only doing was philosophy, which can often be anti-religion, anti-God in fact. I was actually writing an answer to the question, Is the Western idea of God illogical? Probably not the most respectful homework to do in the house of religious people. But hey, maybe that was God showing me he's real. Or maybe not. I was visiting my grandmother's house up in the cold northern Norway. I've always had weird feelings while staying there. Always felt like I was being watched at all times. A constant feeling of unease. Especially on the second floor, where me and my little sister was staying. Upstairs is 2 rooms. I slept in the room closest to the staircase. My sister had the adjacent room. The house is fairly old and rather noisy. Often getting woken up at night by my sister walking past my room to go to the bathroom, which is downstairs. My grandmother has struggled for a long time with her sleep. She always wakes up at 3 a.m. every night. She has claimed there is activity around the house. The classic doors opening and closing, sounds of footsteps and the feeling that you are not alone. It was around 2 to 3 a.m. and I could not fall asleep. I was basically rolling around in my bed and ended up laying on the bed staring at the wall. The room started feeling much cooler than usual, and something that happened next still gives me chills to this day. I heard loud, raspy breath right behind me, like someone was laying in bed right behind me, breathing heavily. I'll try to describe what it sounded like. It sounded like someone who was very sick, struggling to breathe. I felt air brush over the back of my neck, and I completely froze. I was terrified. The breathing lasted for several seconds, but it felt like forever. I started to count to 5. I would turn around to see if anything was behind me, and nothing. The room was left in an eerie silence. My heart was pounding so fast and hard it felt like it was going to jump out of my throat. Staring at the door, almost like expecting it to open. And it did. While staring at the door, I see the door handle go down slowly, and the door creaking open. It's hard for me to explain what that felt like, but it was overwhelming. I managed to leap out of bed and move out in the hallway to try and find any explanation of what happened, but I saw nothing, heard nothing. The windows were all closed, so I couldn't find any explanation of what had happened. It felt like I sat in the bed for days, but it was only for a few hours. When morning finally arrived, I went downstairs and sat myself down in the living room. My sister and grandmother was in the kitchen, and I overheard my sister telling my grandmother something. That around 2 to 3 a.m., she was woken up by loud, raspy breathing in her room. When I overheard that, it gave me chills to the bones and made me feel even more terrified. Me and my sister used to visit my grandmother every year, but it's been a fairly long time since I managed to get myself to visit my grandmother again. This event happened when I was 16 years old, and I'm 24 now. Can't make myself go back there just yet, but planning to go there next year. My grandmother is having a hard time lately, so hopefully I can visit her before it's too late. Maybe I'll get new experiences to write about when I go back there.
Stories After Dark.